Of course, get that wonderful time that right after lunch as you settle down and fall asleep. So my name is Ken Spero. As was mentioned, I am the founder and CEO of School Sims. And I don't know, is it just me or did the sessions this morning really kind of link?
Yes.
Kind of on a journey, on a continuum, and hopefully you will find that this is one more step along that path. I was delighted actually after the sessions, especially after Rich Carr's session, I totally changed my presentation. Because I want to build upon what he said and then take it further. And so really, let me ask you a quick question. Blank is the best teacher without looking at the slide. Okay. Anybody else? Okay, experience, right? Often it's our failure experiences that are most memorable, but it is experience that is the best teacher, right? And the thing is from our earliest, from infancy, right? That's how we grow. We learn from experience, even before we can speak or understand, right? We're processing. And so that becomes a very powerful tool relative to how we make decisions. And this is one of my favorite quotes from Viktor Frankl, who was a Holocaust survivor. I'm sure many of you know of him, a neuroscientist and a psychiatrist. Between stimulus and response, there's a space. In that space is our power to choose our response. In our response lies our growth and our freedom. When one thinks about today, our current environment, right, and thinking about what Rich said, that concept of amygdala hijack, aren't we all almost constantly in amygdala hijack? Mm-hmm. With everything that's going on, the stress levels, the tension, the fear, all of those things are present, and so decision making is being thoughtful is very difficult. And when we're faced with issues that we've never faced before, what are we drawing upon? Are we going to remember that lesson that we had and that framework that we're supposed to follow with these 6 easy steps? No, we draw upon our experiences. And often it'll be a gut reaction, right? Our gut is informed by our past experiences. We have I'd suggest a portfolio filled with those experiences, and we very, very quickly in our subconscious sift through those experiences, and that prompts a response. Is that response usually good? Right? Who knows, right? It's an iffy prospect, especially in situations in which there are many stakeholders involved, or the stakes are high. And so decision making is very difficult, and just going with the gut, not being thoughtful, that's not going to cut it, especially in schools, when the stakes are our kids. And so how do we, in fact, create that opportunity for pause? Think quickly, but pause. That opportunity to take advantage of that space. Because not being mindless is never okay. And especially when the stakes are so high. So how do we do that? And to, I forget his name, the last conversation, how do we do it quickly and scalable? How do we harness the power of what we know about what's going on in the brain and be able to do this in a manner that can be both compelling, engaging, and also retrievable, usable? So with that, I'm going to jump right into what I do, by the way. I do simulations, online simulations. If we know that experience is the best teacher, we also know that simulations approximate experience, right? You wouldn't put a pilot into a plane without hours in a simulator. You wouldn't put a doctor or a nurse into an operating theater or into a patient room without hours of simulation time, in whatever form that simulation takes. Why do we do that with our educators? Anybody? Or our school administrators? Are the stakes less high with our kids? Or obviously in the military, right? You wouldn't put somebody out in the field without plenty of practice. So what I'm going to show you is an example of a sim, and then we're going to come back and unpack the neuroscience aspects to it as to why it works, why it makes sense. Okay, so if you can switch over. Okay, go ahead, next actor. Volume. No, you muted it. You muted the one next to restart simulation on the bottom of the screen.
Collaborative groups amongst the teachers with the intention of increasing student achievement.
You've also initiated a co-teaching model where special education and regular education teachers are teaming in classrooms.
Actually, would you mind restarting?
Though still in the early stages, the collaborative groups have developed norms such as treat colleagues respectfully, make positive presumptions, notice your impact.
And then just click through the actors and get to that screen again.
In this scenario, you're the principal of Brookside Elementary School. At Brookside, the less experienced faculty members tend to be special educators, and there's a divide between the veterans and the new faculty. You were concerned about the progress of students with diverse learning needs, so during your first 2 years at the school, you successfully established collaborative groups amongst the teachers with the intention of increasing student achievement. You've also initiated a co-teaching model where special education and regular education teachers are teaming in classrooms. Though still in the early stages, the collaborative groups have developed norms such as treat colleagues respectfully, make positive presumptions, notice your impact on others, and so on. Establishing norms seems to have helped the school climate, but more effort is needed. You're concerned that the staff still does not always treat one another in a professional manner. Your goal is to create a more positive tone in the school.
Okay, so I'm not sure if that was, you all heard all of that. Sorry it was quick, and obviously this is a little bit out of context and we don't have a ton of time. But you're the principal of an elementary school, middle school. This is who you are now. We're going to make decisions as this person. Okay? We don't tell you much about you, right? Because you're you. What are you? Okay? A little bit about the climate in the building, a little bit about what's going on, because we want to create a context, right? Because nothing ever happens in a vacuum. We never face a situation where there's no history, where there's no people that we know, right? Rarely do we end up in a vacuum where nothing else is going on, right? So we want to establish a context, make it authentic, make it realistic. Can you hit next?
Cool. It is now late spring, and state test results indicate students in disaggregated groups are failing to make adequate progress. One of your go-to teachers, Kim Capania, a special education teacher, is assigned to co-teach with a 6th grade teacher, Diana Walsh, who is particularly unpleasant. Kim is a teacher leader who seems well-grounded, highly professional, and someone who gets it. Moments before she is scheduled to facilitate the 6th grade collaborative team meeting, she asks to speak with you and then arrives in your office.
Okay, next, please. I guess it's a little lower on the screen.
Thank you for meeting with me. I'm sorry I am so upset, but I've been trying to decide if I should even come to you about this. Now I think I've waited too long, but you must know, Diana is very tough on the kids. She has her favorites, but with some kids, she has such an attitude. She's sarcastic and she calls them lazy, and she's making some of them really shut down. I do all I can to build the kids up, but we're supposed to be teaming in her classroom. She's making that impossibly hard. On top of that, she's just so rude to some kids and to me.
So this brings us to our first decision point. Kind of a choose your own adventure, if you will. Hit next, please. What are we going to do?
How will you respond to Kim's concerns? Make a choice from the following. 1. Thanks so much for opening up about your concerns, Kim. What are your perceptions about what is going on? Or 2. I've seen some of the same issues with Diana. I'm glad you feel comfortable coming forward. Tell me more about what you've been seeing. Or 3. Kim, you need to understand that she is trying to motivate kids that are falling through the cracks. Some of those kids just need the kind of tough love she is delivering. Or 4. I hear your concerns. The problem is that if it's just you, it is a he said, she said situation. I haven't heard from others who share your concerns.
So these are 4 responses. These are 4 choices that we can make. How we respond to Kim in terms of she's in distress. We're about to go into a team meeting where this other person is going to be there. What do you say? So I'd like you to think real quickly in your minds, 1, 2, 3, or 4. Pick a number. Okay, you don't have to tell me. Now, it's important to remember, keep that number in mind for a second. When it comes to experience, right, as you mentioned, how do we learn best from experience? From getting it wrong. Our most memorable experiences are often ones where we made a mistake, where we missed something, where So the goal here is not to get it right. You can. I mean, if you choose a good response, you'll get a good consequence. If you choose a bad choice, in this context, something less good will happen. But it's not about getting it right, it's about having an experience. What I'd like you to do for just 1 minute, I don't have a timer. Rich, if you want to put your timer up, I'd appreciate it. Take 1 minute, turn to the people at your table, share with them what you should each, everybody should share what number you want and why, and go around the table and then we'll vote.
I'm glad you have the timer.
My job.
I was somewhere between 1 and 2. Because I think you want to validate that she's not like total off. Right. That's what 2 is kind of validating. But then if, as the principal, you also don't want to like move into that space too much, but you kind of need a validator too. Maybe, I don't know, somewhere between 1 and 2. I like the question.
Okay, I hate to stop this,
Yeah.
but I'd like to first take a vote. Who wants, how many people wanted 1? Okay. Now, in your groups, how aligned were you in that? It seems like most of you were thinking about, hey, this is a really fairly straightforward one. Was anybody tempted to say, I really don't like 3, but I'd like to see what would happen?
Yeah.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
Now, that's a wonderful component to this modality, right? That's absolutely an option. And in fact, you can have the experience once and go back and play it again, right? Because every experience is valuable. However, what happened in your discussion? Was there some sharing going on? Did anybody share something that they had experienced or somebody that they knew? Right? So I'm going to refer back to this, but one of the things that Rich mentioned, he showed you the picture of the whole brain, which I'm so glad he did because I didn't have it. Right? What happens in experience is our neurons are firing, our neural pathways are creating across our entire brain, right? There's 8 different spots, I think, locations where things are happening in the brain, whereas when we're learning, it's maybe 2. When we're being instructed, we're reading, right? So what happens in experience is we're engaging with whatever the situation is from a number of different perspectives, our senses, comprehension, a variety of perspectives. But we're also, what has been found in research is that stories affect the brain the same way as experience. When we're engaging in a narrative, when we're engaging in a story, there is the opportunity to light up the brain in the same way as if you're actually there. And because we're social creatures, and we like being, right? That chemical release happens when we're engaged in stories. Oxytocin is released, so we're feeling more trusting and generous to the people that we're talking to. Serotonin gets released because our social status is going to be potentially impacted. As we hear things that we like, dopamine might get released. There's a whole lot of stuff going on in the brain that's released by stories that harness the power of experience. And this opportunity is both engaging, it's scalable, it's online, and it allows for the opportunity to embed it within whatever else you're doing, because it's about experience and being aligned with a variety of content areas. Let's choose, can you choose the first choice? What's next? Let's see what happens.
Well, I'm here now, so I may as well just get it all out. I know a lot of kids really like her, but I think she is so demeaning. She gives me such nasty looks sometimes, and she'll stare at me, so I feel she's undermining what I'm trying to get done in class. Sometimes she won't even give me a table or a place to work with the kids. She treats me like I'm not a professional, like I'm not a teacher. I've seen her treat other staff that way too. She needs to be more respectful. Anyway, I'm sure I've taken too much of your time, and I know we both have to get to my team's collaborative meeting. I didn't mean to dump this on you, but I just didn't know what else to do.
What's next?
How will you react to Kim's thoughts? Make a choice from the following. 1. Kim, this is really troubling. Your work is so important, and I'm concerned you aren't being treated respectfully. You definitely aren't taking too much of my time. Is there more? Or 2. It seems as though you've been thinking about doing something about this situation. Addressing your concerns directly with Ms. Walsh could be a good start. Do you think it would work if you reminded her about our positive assumptions norm? Or 3. Kim, thank you for sharing how uncomfortable you feel when working with Ms. Walsh. Since we're close to the end of the semester, do you think we can finish the school year and perhaps address this over the summer and into the fall? Or 4. Let's go to the meeting. We can continue this conversation later. Thanks for sharing with me.
So let's pick a number. By the way, the reason why I'm asking you to pick a number before asking you to speak is what, anybody have a thought as to why? How many times have you been in a session where there's an open-ended, whatever it is, discussion ensues, or a team meeting, and the first person who's brave enough, as Rich said, right? If you're put on the spot to share, then you're going, yeah, that sounds about right. Yeah, I'll go along with that. So being able to actually get some commitment in the head, in your brain, right, in terms of what you would do, I'm not asking you to speak it out, but then it allows for that possibility, right? Because then what can happen during discussion? You might change. You might get some insight. It might be your gut reaction that says, yeah, that's what I would do. And then your peer says, oh, God, this happened to me last week. Now all of a sudden you're going, I never thought of it that way. These are contextual issues. These are perspective-driven. And the only way I'm going to know your perspective is what? If you tell me.
How about saying, why don't you kill her with kindness?
You know, funny. Now, first of all, by the way, now we actually force a choice, right? That seems unrealistic, right? Nobody's ever forced into a choice, realistically. Right? So that's some of the times, there's an obvious choice, a really good answer. We won't even include it. Why? Because it's obvious. There's no critical thinking in that. And again, it's not about getting it right. Although we might want to talk about it, that we know that there's a right answer out there, a good answer, if you will. And we'll leave off the really bad answers unless there's humor, so to get offended to that. But really the goal is to wrestle with the underlying trade-offs that are at play. Right? There are issues that fit, social, emotional issues. There may be building policy issues. There may be, whatever the case, you may be afraid of this other person, right? She's a bully. Right? You have maybe been bullied by this person. So how are you responding and how you are perceiving this? It should be discussed because we want to unpack those underlying trade-offs. And you have a different approach. Great. Let's talk about it because if you can express it, then we've accomplished our objective, which is critical thinking, which is being thoughtful about it. But when you said that, by the way, the verbiage that you used, I was doing this with another group of independence principles, and they read the second one, which is, it seems as though you're thinking about doing something. They read that as violence, either to herself or to others.
Yep.
Like, wow, we didn't think about that when we were writing it. We certainly weren't intending that, but it's amazing the power of language, right? And the power of perception, and it's important. The beauty of the modality is that we can trigger, potentially, constructively. If there's something that you see in the sim that you don't like, there's a good chance that you'll say, wait a minute, and we get it on the table. We've had situations in which a student gets triggered by what's in the sim. It was just not included something from their background that this really, really offended them. And it allows the facilitator to ask, why? And when the student shares their story, their experience, the insight, the impact on the other students was unbelievable. So the opportunity to engage in this manner, from a neuroscience perspective, this works. Rich explained a lot of the science, and there's more to it than that. You can't do much in half an hour. But in terms of the engagement factor, in terms of being able to, and what, sorry, I forgot your name from this morning, upending, right? Turning experience experience should drive, right? We can then discover, when you're experiencing this and you realize, damn, I actually don't know what to do. What happens? You're not motivated to go to the class, to read the book, to read the article, and you're engaged in that because it's now part of the experience, and you're lighting up. I'd really love to go further in this. I'd love you to meet Diana. She's a trip. But the other aspect of this, when you think about stories and you think about the power, if you can switch back to the PowerPoint, and I'm happy to share this with you if you want to find me. I'm happy to get you a link to this in the play. Where this goes, by the way, the objective is, one of the things that we do in designing an experience is to make sure it's not a one and done scenario. Right? You're going to live life. You're going to make anywhere from 6 to 10 decisions because we want you to experience both the short term as well as potentially longer term implications, right? There's always a ripple effect, right? It's never done, right? There's always blowback. And often it's the blowback that gets us more than the decisions themselves. And so the opportunity to see how things play out, to navigate this, how you're dealing with this results in whether or not Kim actually stays on staff. You want to be the goal, you don't see this up front, but obviously that's what to say. She's going to leave. And it's probably easier for her to leave than for you to get Diana out. But you also need to get Diana out. If she's back, you discover that she is a bully. Obviously, you need to do the vetting document that is Mirage. So in terms of actually having that whole experience, because it's not just one and done. You're not finished when you have the conversation. And it's important to be able to put things in that context so that they can be, that experience can be harnessed and learned from and blended with anything else. Right? So this is not designed to be the solution. But when you use an experience-driven approach, it gives you that much more flexibility with your content. And as the last presenter was talking about, in terms of that design, right? Or the going back to learn, act, do, right? Maybe it's act, learn, do. Or do, learn, act. But it's more than just learn. It needs to be more than learn. And this works at any age. Because there's no age that isn't engaged by stories, because we're wired for it. But the other aspect is we love to tell stories. That's how we process our experience. We talk about it. We share. We tell. And that has the benefit, obviously, of our hearing that. But it also builds social capital. It also builds connection. In this day and age, especially now when schools are so filled with acrimony and disagreement, the job of the educator, the job of the administrator is incredibly isolated. And when you put that together with the data that's out there on what happens from a loneliness perspective, and that actually cuts years off your life, how do we address well-being? So how about we address, when we look at it from the neuroscience lens, we actually see connectedness is chemical. We can't help it. We just have to create the opportunities. Right? And then you put it into the student's hands, which was described earlier. Students take ownership of the learning once they're engaged in it. Who knows what it prompts? And as a facilitator, you can just sit back and listen. Let it go wherever it goes. Because the goal is the experience, not finishing the sale. Not finishing the module, whatever the case may be. So really, having something that allows for both, on the one hand, engagement, because if you don't have engagement, we've got nothing. Right? So it can be a great module, but you can't engage them in it. They don't want to do it. They're not going to. But at the same time, it needs to be retrievable. It needs to be usable. I need to know what to do with this information. And so stories provide that bridge that are both engaging. Did anybody here? I'm curious. I don't know the answer to this. Right? It's a dangerous question. Did anybody here see that and go, I don't care? And I'm sure nobody's going to say yes to that. So, but I'm guessing that it doesn't take much, even though it may not be your world, right? But we're human, and we react with humanity most of the time. And so the ability to engage is not rocket science. We all know stories. But we don't want to recreate history. We don't want to, because then people get locked in, we get anchored into the past, we get anchored into what was done. But we want it to be, when we establish a context, it's not my building, but it could be. When we use video, I actually have a significant bias. I don't like avatars. I'm sorry for any avatars in the room. We use video because we want it to be, they're not my people, but they could be. And being able to, again, from that engagement perspective. And again, so from the neuroscience perspective, we know emotional engagement is what we need for memory. And all these things are firing as a result of the engagement in the story. It's quite the fascinating research on oxytocin, and if you haven't seen it, the research by Paul Zak, Z-A-K, it's just fascinating information on how we react, how we respond, and how we're prompted, and the trust that can be, it actually goes into the previous discussion, when you combine trust with purpose, it actually dramatically, Reed has data that shows productivity and profitability go up dramatically. When you put the two together, and it's narrative-based. And this is just, so what we've seen from learning science is a result of the neuroscience, I believe, from behavioral economics, and we look at some of the other cognitive issues. But these are often prompted by what's going on chemically. And when you design things in this way, you can dramatically increase the value of the learning that's going to take place. Because we will just remember more. We're creating the possibility for having an impact. And really, one other aspect that's going on here, so this is the flow of the sim, but really what I wanted to capture, that's a very busy slide, I apologize, but once we engage in the story, there's that opportunity for the oxytocin, that's the opportunity for engagement. It doesn't take much to get the cortisol flowing, right? The cortisol is the stress, the tension. Hopefully we don't get into hijack territory, but we need cortisol because that focuses our attention. We need to be able to focus on what's going on because there's so much happening. How do we focus in the moment? Cortisol does that, right? That's how, back in the day, we were able to focus to not get eaten, etc. So we need the cortisol to fire, but our brains are lazy, right? We like to flit. We like to get distracted. And if we don't keep bringing it back, right, we will lose attention. That's why having decisions, having opportunities for discussion, if you're doing it in groups, obviously you can do them asynchronously as well. But having that fires the cortisol because that brings attention right back. And so we stay engaged. And then this idea of the mirror neurons, right, that we start to, there has been research that talks about when we're engaged in stories together, there is actually synchronicity between our heartbeats. Fascinating concept. So we talk about the idea of alignment. We talk about the idea. We have teams, right, in schools, for instance, or any company, or wherever you are. You're going to have differences of opinion. But we all need to be aligned. We don't have to agree, but we do have to be aligned. We have to be pulling in the same direction. And we find spaces where we can have that disagreement, have that discussion, but we do have to be pulling. And especially in something like schools where you're dealing with policies and parents are going to be on opposite sides of things. We have to be consistent. How do we get that alignment? It was happening quite organically here, chemically. And there was a fascinating article recently that I came across that says even when people who are engaged in the same story, even when they're not going through it at the same time, are linked. Fascinating concept. Who knows how that works? But it's happening. And it's been, evidence is in the research. So this is, when you think about a modality that allows for this kind of, to take into account how we design instruction. When you think about project-based learning for kids, what is that? What's this? In another form, right? It is story-based word problems and math, right? Who came up with the word problem? Because it was easier to get when you put it into a realistic context, even in a really small area. Right? It allows for the opportunity for engagement in a better way. Not the answer, but it certainly moves things better than the equations might go. And as you know, we've been doing simulations for a long time, and I was just tickled by this again. This was this slide was up by Robert, had it up earlier. This is the World Economic Forum's 10 top skills of 2025, and I know you can't read them, but only 2 of them can be taught. Top skills for 2025, they are analytical thinking and innovation, active learning and learning strategies, complex problem solving, critical thinking and analysis, creativity, originality and initiative, leadership and social influence, resilience, stress tolerance, reasoning, problem solving. Then the other 2 are technology use, monitoring and control, technology design and programming. That's zone number 7 and 8. I think, aside from 7 and 8, all of them are only made better through experience. I can tell you about them, but we don't get better at them without experience. And yet, when it comes to learning new skills and teaching behaviors, what do? We teach. We instruct. As if that's going to make a difference. And really, you know, I joke sometimes, but I've been doing simulations for over 30 years, only more recently in the K-12 space. I've worked with leaders from around the world. I know this modality, I knew anecdotally that it worked, because this is what I did, and it worked. But I never knew why. And now I do. And when you think about the challenge that we face today, the challenge of leadership when you're dealing with high stakes, when you're dealing with complex decisions, when it's complicated or exacerbated by groups of stakeholders whose demands are often exclusive of each other, and each person is more irrational than the next, you're never going to get it right. You can't teach that, right? Don't expect to get it right. You just do the best you can. That's exercise good judgment. And at the same time, you need to be resilient. You need to have consistency as an expectation. You can roll with the, hopefully, the bigger punches. And continue to navigate this as an editor. It's never one and done. Just have to get ready to gear up for the next one. So with that, thank you very much. If you're interested, this is my information. I'm going to share the, I'm guessing that they will share the slides. I'm happy to send them to you, and also access to that simulation.